Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome to Cat Tales, a Warrior Cats podcast hosted by me, Coffee. This is the very, very first episode of the podcast. My microphone almost fell onto the ground. That would have been bad. This is a solo podcast. It's just me today and probably forever. Welcome, welcome. If you're curious about Warrior Cats, you've come to the right place. I'm going to be going through the books in an easily digestible manner. How this is going to work is every episode I'll cover a few chapters, anywhere from 2 to 4 chapters, depending on how long they are, how long the book is, and generally how long I can talk. I want to make these episodes roughly an hour long. I think an hour is a good time frame. I don't want to make it longer than that because my personal attention span doesn't really stretch longer than an hour. I think an hour is the perfect time frame. Also, I just ate, so my voice is very, gravelly and phlegmy and gross. So I just picked up my physical copy of Warriors Into the Wild, the very first installment, released in 2003 by Erin Hunter. I'm now going to read the little blurb on the side of the book. Fire alone can save our clan. For generations, 4 clans of wildcats have shared the forest according to the laws laid down by their powerful ancestors. But the warrior code is threatened, and the Thunderclan cats are in grave danger. The sinister Shadow Clan grows stronger every day. Noble warriors are dying, and some deaths are more mysterious than others. In the midst of this turmoil appears an ordinary house cat named Rusty, who may yet turn out to be the bravest warrior of them all. XXL freestyle, but it's Warrior Cats freestyle. Damn, I'm on my rusty shit. Oops, I meowed again. It's a Warrior Cats podcast. Okay. I hope you can't hear my pages turning. I just opened the book backwards. So for context, these books, they have a little list in the beginning of all the cats in the book. It's called the Allegiances. It lists all the cats in Thunderclan, Shadow Clan, Wind Clan, and River Clan. And it lists them in these categories. There's a leader, who's the leader of the clan. A deputy, which is the second in command. Kind of like a vice president. And it works in the same way where if the leader, aka the president, dies, then the deputy would take the leader's place. There's a medicine cat, and that's basically the clan's healer. In the earlier books, there's usually just one medicine cat, but in the later books, there's multiple, which is arguably a good thing. And then there's the warriors, which are described as toms and she-cats without kits. Yeah, unfortunately, these books aren't woke, so there's no non-binary cats. Sorry. Yeah, the warriors are basically the cats that just hunt and fight for the clan. And then we have apprentices, who are more than 6 moons old in training to become warriors. In the Warriors universe, moons equals months. And then we have the queens, she-cats expecting or nursing kits. So basically, pregnant cats or cats with kits that are less than 6 moons old. And then we have elders, former warriors and queens now retired. And that's a general clan structure. I'm not going to go through and name every single cat in every single clan and every single category because we don't have time for that. However, as some cats come up, if they don't really have a physical description, I will go back to the Allegiances and read it so you know what the cat looks like. These books also come with a map of the territories. Now, if you're on audio, I urge you to look up a picture of this. If you're on YouTube, I'm going to post a picture of the map right now. They have a cat version and a human version of the map. I never look at the human version. I don't understand the reasoning for that, because it's a fictional place, and the human names for these places in the map are never mentioned, so I don't really understand. Prologue. A half moon glowed on smooth granite boulders, turning them silver. The silence was broken only by the ripple of water from the swift black river and the whisper of trees in the forest beyond. There was a stirring in the shadows, and from all around, lithe, dark shapes crept stealthily over the rocks. Unsheathed claws glinted in the moonlight. Wary eyes flashed like amber. And then, as if on a silent signal, the creatures leaped at each other, and suddenly the rocks were alive with wrestling, screeching cats. Hardest book intro ever. 9-year-old me was like, oh my god. At the center of this fight, a massive dark tabby pinned a bracken-colored tom to the ground and drew up his head triumphantly. Oakheart, the tabby growled. How dare you hunt in our territory? The Sunning Rocks belong to Thunderclan. After tonight, Tigerclaw, this will be just another RiverClan hunting ground. The bracken-colored Tom spat back. A cat yowls from the shore. Look out! More RiverClan warriors are coming. We learn that the dark tabby, his name is Tigerclaw. Tigerclaw is a big dark brown tabby tom with unusually long front claws. Spot the villain challenge impossible. Tigerclaw turned to see sleek wet bodies sliding out of the water below the rocks. The drenched RiverClan warriors bounded silently up the shore and hurled themselves into battle without even stopping to shake the water from their fur. Tigerclaw glared down at Oakheart. Oakheart is the RiverClan deputy. You may swim like otters, but you and your warriors do not belong in this forest. And I wonder how they know what otters are. There's some things that don't make sense in these books, and as we go through them, you'll see what I mean. He drew back his lips and showed his teeth as the cat struggled beneath him. The fight continues. A Thunderclan she-cat gets pinned down by a RiverClan Tom, and he's trying to kill her. Tigerclaw hears it and lets go of Oakheart. He knocks the enemy warrior away, says, Quick, Mousefur, run! And then Mousefur runs away. Tigerclaw! The yowl came from a warrior with a tail as red as fox fur. This is useless. There are too many RiverClan warriors. No, Redtail. Thunderclan will never be beaten, Tigerclaw yowled back, leaping to Redtail's side. This is our territory. Blood was welling around his broad black muzzle, and he shook his head impatiently, scattering scarlet drops onto the rocks. Yeah, so the thing about the Warriors books is they're not very clear sometimes with descriptions. I don't remember Tigerclaw having a black muzzle. Yeah, another comment I had is that this is a kids' book series, and there's blood on page 2. Kind of meta if you think about it, but it's also like, oh, guns aren't the problem, warrior cats is the problem. Tigerclaw says, No, Redtail, Thunderclan will never be beaten. This is our territory. Redtail says, Thunderclan will honor your courage, but we cannot afford to lose any more of our warriors. Bluestar would never expect her warriors to fight against these impossible odds. We will have another chance to avenge this defeat. And then he leaps onto a boulder and yells for Thunderclan to retreat. For a heartbeat, the RiverClan cats looked confused. Was this battle so easily won? Then Oakheart yowled a jubilant cry. As soon as they heard him, the RiverClan warriors raised their voices and joined their deputy in caterwauling their victory. Redtail looked down at his warriors. With a flick of his tail, he gave the signal, and the Thunderclan cats dived down the far side of the Sunning Rocks, then disappeared into the trees. Tigerclaw followed last. He hesitated at the edge of the forest and glanced back at the blood-stained battlefield. His face was grim, his eyes furious slits. Then he leaped after his clan into the silent forest. I have 2 notes. Number 1, if you're wondering what this fight is about, don't worry, they'll cover it. Number 2, if you can hear my stomach making noises, I am so sorry. I just ate, and I had ice cream, and I'm lactose intolerant, and it's gonna come back to bite me in about an hour, so I apologize for that. In a deserted clearing, an old gray she-cat sat alone, staring up at the clear night sky. All around her in the shadows, she could hear the breathing and stirrings of sleeping cats. A small tortoiseshell she-cat emerged from a dark corner, her paw steps quick and soundless. The gray cat dipped her head in greeting. How is Mousefur? The tortoiseshell answers. Her wounds are deep, Bluestar, but she is young and strong. She will heal quickly. Bluestar asks about the others. The tortoiseshell says they will all recover too. Then Bluestar says, We are lucky not to have lost any of our warriors this time. You are a gifted medicine cat, Spotted Leaf. I am deeply troubled by tonight's defeat. Thunderclan has not been beaten in its own territory since I became leader. These are difficult times for our clan. The season of New Leaf is late, and there have been fewer kits. Thunderclan needs more warriors if it is to survive. Another note is that in this universe, the cats have words for seasons. New Leaf is spring, Green Leaf is summer, Leaf Fall is fall, and then Leaf Bear is winter. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but just wanted to clear that up. Spotted Leaf says, But the year is only just beginning. There will be more kits when Green Leaf comes. Bluestar says, Perhaps, but training our young to become warriors takes time. If Thunderclan is to defend its territory, it must have new warriors as soon as possible. Spotted Leaf asks Bluestar if she's asking StarClan for answers. And then Bluestar says, It is at times like this we need the words of ancient warriors to help us. Has StarClan spoken to you? If you can't already tell from this little passage here, StarClan is basically their ancestors. It's their religion. Spotted Leaf says, She hasn't heard from StarClan in some moons. Suddenly, a shooting star blazed over the treetops. Spotted Leaf's tail twitched and the fur along her spine bristled. Bluestar's ears pricked, but she remained silent as Spotted Leaf continued to gaze upward. After a few moments, Spotted Leaf lowered her head and turned to Blue Star. It was a message from StarClan, she murmured. A distant look came into her eyes. Fire alone can save our clan. Just digest that for a minute. Blue Star says, fire? But fire is feared by all the clans. How can it save us? Spotted Leaf says, I don't know, but this is the message StarClan has chosen to share with me. The ThunderClan leader fixed her clear blue eyes on the medicine cat. You have never been wrong before, Spotted Leaf, she meowed. If StarClan has spoken, then it must be so. Fire will save our clan. And that's the prologue. And now, we're going to get into chapter 1. There's not as much dialogue in this chapter, so I'm going to try and summarize where I can. It was very dark. Rusty could sense something was near. The young tomcat's eyes opened wide as he scanned the dense undergrowth. This place was unfamiliar, but the strange sense drew him onward, deeper into the shadows. His stomach growled, reminding him of his hunger. He opened his jaws slightly to let the warm smells of the forest reach the scent glands on the roof of his mouth. Musty odors of leaf mold mingled with the tempting aroma of a small furry creature. Suddenly a flash of gray raced past him. Rusty stopped still, listening. It was hiding in the leaves less than 2 tail lengths away. Rusty knew it was a mouse. He could feel the rapid pulsing of a tiny heart deep within his ear fur. He swallowed, stifling his rumbling stomach. Soon his hunger would be satisfied. Slowly he lowered his body into position, crouching for the attack. He was downwind of the mouse. He knew it was not aware of him. With one final check on his prey's position, Rusty pushed back hard on his haunches and sprang, kicking up leaves on the forest floor as he rose. The mouse dived for cover, heading toward a hole in the ground. But Rusty was already on top of it. He scooped it into the air, hooking the helpless creature with his thorn-sharp claws, flinging it up in a high arc onto the leaf-covered ground. The mouse landed dazed but alive. It tried to run, but Rusty snatched it up again. He tossed the mouse once more, this time a little farther away. The mouse managed to scramble a few paces before Rusty caught up with it. Suddenly a noise roared nearby. Rusty looked around, and as he did so, the mouse was able to pull away from his claws. When Rusty turned back, he saw it dart into the darkness among the tangled roots of a tree. Angry, Rusty gave up the hunt. He spun around, his green eyes glaring, intent on searching out the noise that had cost him his kill. The sound rattled on, becoming more familiar. Rusty blinked open his eyes. So Rusty wakes up from his dream. He's inside a hot and airless kitchen, curled in his bed. Moonlight is coming through the window and casting shadows on the smooth, hard floor. The noise had been the rattle of hard, dried pellets of food as they were tipped into his dish. Yeah, he notices he's wearing a collar. It rubs uncomfortably around his neck. He could still smell the mouse from his dream. It was the 3rd time since the full moon that he'd had the dream, and every time the mouse had escaped his grasp. So basically, his dreams are rage-baiting him at this point. From his bed, he could smell the bland odor of his food. His owners always refilled his dish before they went to bed. The dusty smell chased away the warm sense of his dream. But the hunger rumbled on in his stomach, so Rusty stretched the sleep out of his limbs and padded across the kitchen floor to his dinner. The food felt dry and tasteless on his tongue. Rusty reluctantly swallowed one more mouthful. Then he turned away from the food dish and pushed his way out through the cat flap, hoping that the smell of the garden would bring back the feelings from his dream. Outside, the moon was bright. It was raining lightly. See, that's an immediate contradiction, because how is the moon bright but it's raining lightly? And don't come into the comments being like, well, the cloud cover might be kind of low. And if the moon is bright, that is implying that there are not clouds. It's a contradiction. So Rusty goes into his garden in the backyard. He made his dirt beneath a large bush with glossy green leaves and heavy purple flowers. So, making dirt is it's taking a shit in this universe, which you can probably figure out, but I just wanted to make it clear. Afterwards, Rusty sits down on top of one of the posts in the fence that marked the limits of his garden. It's a favorite spot of his, as he can see into the neighboring gardens as well as the dense green forest on the other side of the fence. The rain stops. Behind him, the close-cropped lawn was bathed in moonlight, but beyond his fence the woods were full of shadows. Rusty stretched his head forward to take a sniff of the damp air. His skin was warm and dry under his thick coat, but he could feel the weight of the raindrops that sparkled on his ginger fur. He heard his owners giving him one last call from the back door. If he went to them now, they would greet him with gentle words and caresses and welcome him in onto their bed, where he would curl, purring, warm in the crook of a bent knee. But this time Rusty ignored his owners' voices and turned his gaze back to the forest. The crisp smell of the woods had grown fresher after the rain. Suddenly the fur on his spine prickled. Was something moving out there? Was something watching him? Rusty stared ahead, but it was impossible to see or smell anything in the dark, tree-scented air. He lifted his chin boldly, stood up and stretched, one paw gripping each corner of the fence post as he straightened his legs and arched his back. Ooh, big stretch. He closed his eyes and breathed in the smell of the woods once more. It seemed to promise him something, tempting him onward into the whispering shadows. Tensing his muscles, he crouched for a moment. Then he leaped lightly down into the rough grass on the other side of the garden fence. As he landed, the bell on his collar rang out through the still night air. "Where are you off to, Rusty?" meowed a familiar voice behind him. Rusty looked up. A young black and white cat was balancing ungracefully on the fence. "Hello, Smudge," Rusty replied. Smudge is Rusty's, best friend. "You're not going to go into the woods, are you?" Smudge's amber eyes were huge. Rusty says, "I'm just going for a look." Smudge says, "You wouldn't get me in there. It's dangerous," and he wrinkles his nose. "Henry said he went into the woods once." And then Rusty says, "That fat old tabby never went into the woods. He's hardly been beyond his own garden since his trip to the vet. All he wants to do is eat and sleep." And we'll figure out what trip to the vet means. Smudge says, "No, really, he caught a robin there." Rusty says, "Well, if he did, then it was before the vet. Now he complains about birds because they disturb his dozing." "Well, anyway," Smudge went on, ignoring the scorn in Rusty's mew, "Henry told me there are all sorts of dangerous animals out there. Huge wildcats who eat live rabbits for breakfast and sharpen their claws on old bones." Rusty says again, "I'm only going for a look around. I won't stay long." "Well, don't say I didn't warn you," purred Smudge. The black and white cat turned and plunged off the fence back down into his own garden. Rusty sat down in the coarse grass beyond the garden fence. He gave his shoulder a nervous lick and wondered how much of Smudge's gossip was true. The movement of a tiny creature catches his eye. Ears pricked, nostrils flared, eyes unblinking, he moved toward the animal. He could see it clearly now, sitting up among the barbed branches, nibbling on a large seed held between its paws. It was a mouse. Rusty rocked his haunches from side to side, preparing to leap. He held his breath in case his bell rang again. Excitement coursed through him, making his heart pound. This was even better than his dreams. Then a sudden noise of cracking twigs and crunching leaves made him jump. His bell jangled treacherously, and the mouse darted away into the thickest tangle of the bramble bush. Rusty stood very still and looked around. He could see the white tip of a red, bushy tail trailing through a clump of tall ferns up ahead. He smelled a strong, strange scent, definitely a meat eater, but neither cat nor dog. Distracted, Rusty forgot about the mouse and watched the red tail curiously. He wanted a better look. He prowls forward, and he detects another noise. He swiveled his ears backward to hear it better. Paw steps, he wondered, but he kept his eyes fixed on the strange red fur up ahead and continued to creep onward. It was only when the faint rustling behind him became a loud and fast-approaching leaf crackle that Rusty realized he was in danger. The creature hit him like an explosion, and Rusty was thrown sideways into a clump of nettles. Twisting and yowling, he tried to throw off the attacker that had fastened itself to his back. It was gripping him with incredibly sharp claws. Rusty could feel spiked teeth pricking at his neck. He writhed and squirmed from whisker to tail, but he couldn't free himself. For a second he felt helpless, then he froze. Thinking fast, he flipped over onto his back. He knew instinctively how dangerous it was to expose his soft belly, but it was his only chance. He was lucky. The ploy seemed to work. He heard a huff beneath him as the breath was knocked out of his attacker. Thrashing fiercely, Rusty managed to wriggle free. Without looking back, he sprinted towards his home. Yeah, so they use a lot of, action words and noises in these early books, which is very charming. And they stopped doing this in the later books, which is really sad. It makes it less fun, I guess. So Rusty turns around to see who his attacker is. It was another kitten, with a thick coat of shaggy gray fur, strong legs, and a broad face. In a heartbeat, Rusty smelled that it was a tom, and sensed the power in the sturdy shoulders underneath the soft coat. He's immediately gay for this cat. No, just kidding. Let's continue. Then the kitten crashed into Rusty at full pelt. Taken by surprise by Rusty's turnabout, fell back into a dazed heap. Rusty quickly found his footing and arched his back, puffing out his orange fur, ready to spring onto the other kitten. But his attacker simply sat up and began to lick a forepaw, all signs of aggression gone. Rusty felt strangely disappointed. Every part of him was tense, ready for battle. "Hi there, kitty pet," meowed the gray tom cheerily. "You put up quite a fight for a tame kitty." And then Rusty is kind of still on edge for a second, wondering if he should attack. But then he realizes this kitten is actually stronger than him. So he loosens his muscles and lets his spine unbend and relaxes. And he says, "I'll fight you again if I have to." "I'm Graypaw, by the way," the gray kitten went on, ignoring Rusty's threat. "I'm training to be a Thunderclan warrior." Rusty remained silent. He didn't understand what this gray what's-it was meowing about, but he sensed the threat had passed. Okay, it's Graypaw. It's not a complicated name, but saying gray what's-it is crazy. He hid his confusion by leaning down to lick his ruffled chest. Graypaw asks, "What's a kitty pet like you doing out in the woods? Don't you know it's dangerous?" And then Rusty claps back and says, "If you're the most dangerous thing the woods has to offer, then I think I can handle it." Graypaw looks up at him, narrowing his big yellow eyes. "Oh, I'm far from the most dangerous. If I were even half a warrior, I'd have given an intruder like you some real wounds to think about." Rusty felt the thrill of fear at these ominous words. What did this cat mean by intruder? Anyway, meowed Greypaw, I didn't think it was worth hurting you. You're obviously not from one of the other clans. Rusty asks, other clans? And Greypaw's really impatient, and he's like, you must have heard of the 4 warrior clans that hunt around here. I belong to Thunderclan. The other clans are always trying to steal prey from our territory, especially ShadowClan. They're so fierce, they would have ripped you to shreds, no questions asked. Yeah, obviously we know about the 4 clans. Obviously we're not reading this book for the first time, so we don't need the expose, we don't need the description. Obviously we know, Greypaw. And Greypaw paused to spit angrily, hawked tuah, and continued. They come to take prey that is rightfully ours. It's the job of the Thunderclan warriors to keep them out of our territory. When I finish my training, I'll be so dangerous, I'll have the other clans shaking in their flea-bitten skins. They won't dare come near us then. And then Rusty realizes this must be one of the wildcats Smudge had warned him about. But he didn't feel scared. In fact, it was hard not to admire this confident kitten. So you're not a warrior yet? Rusty asked. Why? Did you think I was? Greypaw purred proudly. I won't be a real warrior for ages. I have to go through the training first. Kids have to be 6 moons old before they even begin training. Tonight is my first night out as an apprentice. Then Rusty says, why don't you find yourself an owner with a nice cozy house instead? Your life would be so much easier. There are plenty of housefolk who take in a kitten like you. All you have to do is sit where they can see you and look hungry for a couple of days. And they'd feed me pellets that look like rabbit droppings and soft slop, Greypaw interrupted. No way. I can't think of anything worse than being a kitty pet. Kitty pet is a house cat. They're nothing but 2-legged toys, eating stuff that doesn't look like food, making dirt in a box of gravel, sticking their noses outside only when the 2 legs allow them. That's no life. Out here it's wild and it's free. We come and go as we please. He finished his speech with a proud spit. Him and Haley Welch need to have a competition or something. He keeps spitting. And then he meows, until you've tasted a fresh killed mouse, you haven't lived. Have you ever tasted mouse? Rusty says, no, not yet. And Greypaw says, I guess you'll never understand. You weren't born wild. It makes a big difference. You need to be born with warrior blood in your veins, or the feel of the wind in your whiskers. Kitties born into 2-legness can never feel the same way. And then Rusty remembers the dream he has, and he says, that's not true. Greypaw did not reply. He suddenly stiffened mid-lick, one paw still raised, and sniffed the air. I smell cats from my clan. You should go. They won't be pleased to find you hunting on our territory. Rusty looked around, wondering how Greypaw knew any cat was approaching. He couldn't smell anything different on the leaf-scented breeze, but the fur stood on end at the note of urgency in Greypaw's voice. Greypaw says, quick, run! And as Rusty is preparing to leave and jump into the bushes, he doesn't know which way it was safe to jump, and he's too late. A voice meowed behind him, firm and menacing. What's going on here? Rusty turned to see a large gray she-cat strolling majestically out from the undergrowth. She was magnificent. White hairs streaked her muzzle, and an ugly scar parted the fur across her shoulders, but her smooth gray coat shone like silver in the moonlight. Blue Star! Beside Rusty, Greypaw crouched down and narrowed his eyes. He crouched even lower when a second cat, a handsome golden tabby, followed the gray cat into the clearing. You shouldn't be so near Two-Leg Place, Greypaw, growled the golden tabby angrily, narrowing his green eyes. I know, Lionheart, I'm sorry. Greypaw looked down at his paws. Rusty copied Greypaw and crouched low to the forest floor, his ears twitching nervously. These cats had an air of strength he had never seen in any of his garden friends. Maybe Smudge's warnings were true. Who is this? Asked the she-cat. Rusty flinched as she turned her gaze on him. Her piercing blue eyes made him feel even more vulnerable. Greypaw says he's no threat. He's not another clan warrior, just a 2-leg pet from beyond our territories. Being called just a 2-leg pet makes Rusty really mad, but the warning look in Blue Star's stare told him that she had observed the anger in his eyes, and he looked away. This is Blue Star. She's leader of my clan, Greypaw hissed to Rusty under his breath. And Lionheart. He's my mentor, which means he's training me to be a warrior. Thank you for the introduction, Greypaw, meowed Lionheart coolly. Blue Star was still staring at Rusty. You fight well for a 2-leg pet. And then Rusty and Greypaw exchanged confused glances. How could she know? We've been watching you both, Blue Star went on as if she had read their thoughts. Then Blue Star snaps at them to sit up. You too, kitty pet. He sat up immediately and held Blue Star's gaze evenly as she addressed him. You reacted well to the attack, kitty pet. Greypaw is stronger than you, but you used your wits to defend yourself, and you turned to face him when he chased you. I've not seen a kitty pet do that before. Rusty's taken aback by her praise, but her next words surprised him even more. I've been wondering how you would perform out here beyond the 2-leg place. We patrol this border frequently, so I have often seen you sitting on your boundary staring out into the forest. And now at last you have dared to place your paws here. You do seem to have a natural hunting ability. Sharp eyes. You would have caught that mouse if you had not hesitated so long. Rusty's like, really? And then Lionheart butts in and he says, Blue Star, this is a kitty pet. He should not be hunting in Thunderclan territory. Send him home to his 2 legs. Rusty prickles at Lionheart's dismissive words. Send me home? But I've only come here to hunt for a mouse or 2. I'm sure there's enough to go around. And Blue Star kind of turns to him. She's like, there's never enough to go around. If you didn't live such a soft, overfed life, you would know that. Rusty was confused by Blue Star's sudden rage, but one glance at the horrified look on Greypaw's face was enough to tell him he had spoken too freely. Lionheart stepped to his leader's side. Both warriors loomed over him now. Rusty looked into Blue Star's threatening stare and his pride dissolved. These were not cozy fireside cats he was dealing with. They were mean, hungry cats who were probably going to finish what Greypaw had started. End of chapter 1. Chapter 2. Well, hissed Blue Star, her face only a mouse length from his now. Lionheart remained silent as he towered over Rusty. He flattened his ears and crouched under the Golden Warrior's cold stare. His fur prickled uncomfortably. I'm no threat to your clan, he mewed, looking down at his trembling paws. You threaten our clan when you take our food, yowled Blue Star. You have plenty of food in your 2-leg nest already. You come here only to hunt for sport, but we hunt to survive. This is a truth nuke to Rusty. He stops trembling, sits up, and straightens his ears. And then he makes eye contact with her and says, I had not thought of it that way before. I am sorry. I will not hunt here again. The lion does not concern himself with taking prey of others. No, he didn't say that last part. Blue Star relaxes and signals to Lionheart to step back. You are an unusual kitty pet, Rusty. Then Rusty asks, is survival here really so hard? Blue Star says, our territory covers only part of the forest. We compete with other clans for what we have. In this year, late new leaf means prey is scarce. Rusty asks if the clan is big. She says, big enough. Our territories can support us, but there's no prey left over. Then Rusty asks if they're all warriors, and then Lionheart says, some are warriors, some are too young or too old or too busy caring for kits to hunt. And you all live and share prey together? Rusty murmured in awe, thinking a little guiltily of his own easy, selfish life. And then Blue Star looks at Lionheart, looks back at Rusty, and says, perhaps you could find out these things for yourself. Would you like to join Thunderclan? Dun dun dun. Guess what he's going to say? We're on page 20, and there's 25 chapters. You'll never guess what he's going to say. Well, he doesn't say anything at first, and then Blue Star says, if you did, you would train with Greypaw to become a clan warrior. And then Greypaw is a little racist. He's like, but kitty pets can't be warriors. They don't have warrior blood. Like, okay, J.K. Rowling, like, okay, Mudblood, like. And then Blue Star says, warrior blood. Too much of that has been spilled lately. Lionheart says, Blue Star is only offering you training, young kit. There's no guarantee you would become a full warrior. It might prove too difficult for you. After all, you are used to a comfortable life. And Rusty's a little butthurt, and he says, why offer me the chance then? And it's funny, because I forgot that Rusty is quite sassy in this book. But Blue Star says, you were right to question our motives, young one. The fact is, Thunderclan needs more warriors. Understand that Blue Star does not make this offer lightly, warned Lionheart. If you wish to train with us, we will have to take you into our clan. You must either live with us and respect our ways, or return to your 2-leg place and never come back. You cannot live with a paw in each world. Ooh. And Blue Star asks him if he's wondering if it's worth giving up his comfortable kitty pet life, and if he realizes the price he will pay for his warmth and food. And then Blue Star says something completely different. She says, I can tell that you're still a Tom, despite the 2-leg stench that clings to your fur. Now, why is she transvestigating Rusty here? Let's think about it. No, just kidding. What this means is, well, actually, I'll read it. And Rusty says, what do you mean, still a Tom? And Blue Star says, you haven't yet been taken by the 2-legs to see the Cutter. The Cutter is the vet. You would be very different then. Not quite so keen to fight a clan cat, I suspect. Rusty was confused. He suddenly thought of Henry, who had become fat and lazy since his visit to the vet. Was that what Blue Star meant by the Cutter? And then Blue Star says, the clan may not be able to offer you such easy food or warmth. In the season of leaf bare, nights in the forest can be cruel. The clan will demand great loyalty and hard work. You will be expected to protect the clan with your life if necessary, and there are many mouths to feed, but the rewards are great. You will remain a Tom, so basically, he won't go to the transgender doctor. You will be trained in the ways of the wild. You will learn what it is to be a real cat. The strength and the fellowship of the clan will always be with you, even when you hunt alone. And then Lionheart says, come on, Blue Star, let's not waste any more time here. We must be ready to join the other patrol at Moon High. So, sunrise and sunset are the same in these books, but Moon High is midnight, and Sun High is noon. Tiger Claw will wonder what has become of us. And Rusty says, wait, can I think about it? And Blue Star says, Lionheart will be here tomorrow at sun high. Give him your answer then. And then they all disappear into the forest. Rusty stared, excited, uncertain, up past the ferns that encircled him, through the canopy of leaves to the stars that glittered in the clear sky. The scent of the clan cat still hung heavy in the evening air. And as Rusty turned and headed for home, he felt a strange sensation inside him, tugging him back into the depths of the forest. His fur prickled deliciously in the light wind, and the rustling leaves seemed to whisper his name into the shadows. And that's the end of Chapter 2. Moving on to Chapter 3. That morning, as Rusty slept off his night's wanderings, the mouse dream came again, even more vivid than before. Free of his collar beneath the moon, he stalked the timid creature. But this time he was aware of being watched. Shining from the shadows of the forest, he saw dozens of yellow eyes. The clan cats had entered his dream world. Rusty wakes up. His food bowl has been topped off, and his water bowl rinsed out and filled with bitter-tasting two-leg water. Rusty preferred drinking from puddles outside, but when it was hot or he was very thirsty, he had to admit it was easier to lap up the water indoors. Could he really abandon this comfortable life? He ate, then pushed his way out of the cat flap into the garden. "Hello, Rusty," mewed a voice from the fence. It was Smudge. "You should have been awake an hour ago. The baby sparrows were out stretching their wings." Rusty asks if he catches any, and then Smudge says, "I couldn't be bothered. I'd already eaten enough at home. Anyway, why weren't you out earlier? Yesterday you were complaining about Henry sleeping his time away, and today you're not much better yourself." Rusty sat down on the cool earth beside the fence and curled his tail neatly over his front paws. "I was in the woods last night." And then Smudge says, "Oh yeah, I forgot. How was it? Did you catch anything? Or did anything catch you?" And Rusty pauses for a second, and then he says, "I met some wildcats." "What?" Smudge was clearly shocked. "Did you get into a fight?" "Sort of." Rusty could feel the energy surging through his body again as he recalled the strength and power of the clan cats. He is the most anime protagonist. The energy surging through his body, that happens again in this chapter. It's really funny. He wants to be Deku so bad. It's crazy. Anyway. "Were you hurt? What happened?" Smudge prompted him eagerly. Rusty says there were 3 of them, bigger and stronger than any of us. "And you fought all 3 of them," Smudge interrupted. "No. Just the youngest one. The older 2 came later." "How come they didn't shred you to pieces?" Rusty says, "They just warned me to leave their territory. But then—" "What?" mewed Smudge impatiently. He will not let Rusty finish a sentence. Like, oh my god, relax. Rusty says, "They asked me to join their clan." And then Smudge shuts up. And Rusty says, "They did." And then Smudge says, "Why would they do that?" "I don't know," Rusty admitted. "I think they need extra paws in their clan." "Sounds a bit odd to me," Smudge mewed doubtfully. "I wouldn't trust them if I were you." Rusty knows that Smudge had never shown any interest in venturing into the woods. He's perfectly content living with his housefolk, and he would never understand the restless longing that Rusty's dreams stirred in him night after night. "But I do trust them," Rusty purred softly. Which is crazy, because he met them for 5 minutes, but whatever. "And I've made up my mind. I'm going to join them." And then Smudge says, "Please don't go. I might never see you again." And then Rusty says, "Don't worry. My housefolk will get another cat. You'll get on with him fine. You get along with everyone." Smudge is like, "But it won't be the same." Rusty says, "That's just the point. If I stay around here until they take me to the cutter, I won't be the same either." And then Smudge says, "The cutter?" And then Rusty's like, "The vet. To be altered, like Henry was." Altered is crazy, but I think that's the best choice of words, considering this is a kid's book. Smudge shrugged and stared down at his paws. "But Henry's alright. I mean, I know he's a bit lazier now, but he's not unhappy. We could still have fun." Rusty felt his heart fill with sadness at the thought of leaving his friend. "I'm sorry, Smudge. I'll miss you, but I have to go." Smudge didn't reply, but stepped forward and gently touched Rusty's nose with his own. "Fair enough. I can see I can't stop you, but at least let's spend one more morning together." Rusty's got the gay cat huzz all up everywhere. That was a horrible sentence. I'm going to move on. Rusty found himself enjoying the morning even more than usual, visiting his old haunts with Smudge, sharing words with the cats he had grown up with. Every one of his senses felt supercharged, as if he were poised before a huge jump. See, what did I tell you? His anime senses. As Sunhigh approached, Rusty grew more and more impatient to see if Lionheart would really be waiting for him. The idle buzz of meows from his old friend seemed to fade into the background as all his senses strained towards the woods. Rusty jumped down from his garden fence for the last time and crept into the woods. He had said his goodbyes to Smudge. Now all his thoughts were focused on the forest and the cats who lived in it. As he approached the spot where he had met with the clan cats the night before, he sat down and tasted the air. Tall trees shielded the ground from the midday sunshine, making it comfortably cool. Here and there a patch of sunlight shone through a gap in the leaves and lit up the forest floor. Rusty could smell the same cat scent as last night, but he had no idea whether it was old or new. He lifted his head and sniffed uncertainly. "You have a lot to learn," meowed a deep voice. "Even the tiniest clan kit knows when another cat is nearby." Rusty turns and sees a pair of green eyes glinting from beneath the bramble bush. Now he recognizes Lionheart's scent. "Can you tell if I am alone?" asked the golden tabby, stepping into the light. Rusty sniffed again. The scents of Bluestar and Greypaw were still there, but not as strong as the previous night. Hesitantly, he mewed, "Bluestar and Greypaw aren't with you this time." "That's right," meowed Lionheart, "but someone else is." A second clan cat strode into the clearing. "A second cat has hit the towers." "Sorry." "This is Whitestorm," purred Lionheart, "one of Thunderclan's senior warriors." Rusty looked at the Tom and felt his spine tingle with cold fear. Was this a trap? Long-bodied and muscular, Whitestorm stood in front of Rusty and gazed down at him. His white coat was thick and unmarked, and his eyes were the yellow of sunbaked sand, excuse me. Rusty flattened his ears warily and tensed his muscles in preparation for a fight. "Relax before your fear scent brings unwanted attention," growled Lionheart. "We are here only to take you to our camp." Whitestorm stretches his nose forward and gives Rusty a curious sniff. "Hello, young one," murmured the white cat. "I've heard a lot about you." Rusty dipped his head in greeting. "Come, we can speak more once we are in the camp," ordered Lionheart. And without pausing, he and Whitestorm leaped away into the undergrowth. Rusty jumped to his paws and followed as quickly as he could. The two warriors made no allowances for Rusty as they sped through the forest, and before long he was struggling to keep up. Their pace barely slowed as they led him over fallen trees that they cleared in a single leap, but which Rusty had to scramble over paw by paw. They passed through sharply fragrant pine trees, where they had to jump across deep gullies churned up by a two-legged tree eater, which I believe is one of those, construction machines with, the claw on the front. I forget what they're even called. I'm so sorry. And I forgot to look it up before I recorded this. He continues through the forest. At last, Lionheart and Whitestorm paused. Rusty skidded to a halt behind them and stood panting while the two warriors stepped onto a rock that rested on the edge of a small ravine. "We are very close to camp now," meowed Lionheart. Rusty strains to see any signs of life, but he sees nothing except the same undergrowth that covered the rest of the forest floor. Whitestorm says, "Use your nose. You must be able to scent it." Whitestorm was right. The scents here were very different from the cat scent he was used to. The air smelled stronger, speaking of many, many different cats. He nodded thoughtfully and announced, "I can smell cats." "Wow, we got Captain Obvious over here." "There will come a time, if you are accepted into the clan, when you will know each cat scent by name," Lionheart meowed. "Follow me." He led the way nimbly down the boulders to the bottom of the ravine and pushed his way through a thick patch of gorse. Rusty followed, and Whitestorm took up the rear. As his side scraped against the prickly gorse, Rusty looked down and noticed that the grass beneath his paws was flattened into a broad, strong-smelling track. This must be the main entrance. Beyond the gorse, a clearing opened up. The ground at the center was bare, hard earth, shaped by many generations of paw steps. This camp had been here a long time. The clearing was dappled by sunshine, and the air felt warm and still. Rusty looked around, his eyes wide. There were cats everywhere, sitting alone or in groups, sharing food or purring quietly as they groomed one another. "Just after sun-high, when the day is hottest, is the time for sharing tongues," Lionheart explained. "Sharing tongues sounds a little gory." "Sharing tongues?" Rusty echoed. Whitestorm explains, "Clan cats always spend time grooming each other and sharing the news of the day. We call it sharing tongues. It is a custom that binds the members of the clan together." The cats had obviously smelled Rusty's foreign scent, for heads began to turn and stare curiously in his direction. So he just kind of looks around the clearing and doesn't meet their eyes. "Over there," meowed Lionheart, flicking his tail toward an impenetrable-looking tangle of brambles, "is the nursery, where the kits are cared for." Rusty swiveled his ears toward the bushes. He couldn't see through the knot of prickly branches, but he could hear the mewling of several kittens from somewhere inside. As he watched, a ginger she-cat squirmed out through a small gap in the front. That must be one of the queens, Rusty thought. And I don't know how he already knows they're called queens when nobody told him that, but maybe it's a universal word in the cat universe overall, I don't know. A tabby queen with distinctive black markings appeared around the bramble bush. The two she-cats exchanged a friendly lick between the ears before the tabby slipped inside the nursery, murmuring to the squealing kits. Lionheart says, "The care of our kits is shared by all of the queens. All cats serve the clan. Loyalty to the clan is the first law in our warrior code, a lesson you must learn quickly if you wish to stay with us." Technically, yes, the care of the kits is shared by all the queens, but it becomes less of a group effort later in the books. "Here comes Bluestar," meowed Whitestorm, sniffing the air. Rusty sniffed the air too, and was pleased that he was able to recognize the scent of the gray she-cat a moment before she appeared from the shadow of a large boulder that lay beside them at the head of the clearing. Large boulder the size of a small boulder. Anyone? Okay, anyway. Bluestar says he came, and Whitestorm says Lionheart was convinced he would not, which, like, okay, way to throw Lionheart under the bus. And then Bluestar says, well, what do you think of him? Whitestorm says he kept up well on the return journey despite his puny size. Everyone is catching strays in this conversation. He says he certainly seems strong for a kitty pet. So is it agreed? Bluestar looked at Lionheart and Whitestorm. Both cats nodded. Then I shall announce his arrival to the clan. Bluestar leaped up onto the boulder and yelled, let all those cats old enough to catch their own prey join here beneath the high rock for a clan meeting. So her announcement brings all the cats trotting towards her. Rusty stays where he is, flanked by Lionheart and Whitestorm. The other cats settle themselves below the high rock and look expectantly up at Bluestar. Rusty felt a rush of relief as he recognized Greypaw's thick gray fur among the cats. Beside him sat a young tortoiseshell queen, her black-tipped tail tucked neatly over small white paws. A large dark gray tabby crouched behind them, the black stripes on his fur looking like shadows on a moonlit forest floor. These cats will be important later. Bluestar begins to speak. Thunderclan needs more warriors. Never before have we had so few apprentices in training. It has been decided that Thunderclan will take in an outsider to train as a warrior, and then the clan just erupts. Bluestar silences them and says, I have found a cat who is willing to become an apprentice of Thunderclan. Lucky to become an apprentice, caterwauled a loud voice above the ripple of shock that spread through the cats. And here comes the #1 ragebaiter in this entire book. This scene that I'm about to read is very iconic. There is a whole animation on YouTube. If you look up SSS Warrior Cats, the first few episodes actually animate the chapters that I am reading to you today. It's very, very cool. It was a formative part of my childhood. I highly recommend you go watch them. Rusty craned his neck and saw a pale tabby cat standing up and glaring defiantly at the leader. Bluestar ignored the tabby and addressed all of her clan. Lionheart and Whitestorm have met this young cat, and they agree with me that we should train him with the other apprentices. Rusty looked up at Lionheart, then back at the clan, to find all eyes were on him now. His fur prickled and he swallowed nervously. There was silence for a moment. Rusty was sure they must all be able to hear his heart pulsing and smell his fear scent. Now everyone starts yelling. They're saying, where does he come from? Which clan does he belong to? What a strange scent he carries. That's not the scent of any clan I know. Then one yowl in particular sounded out above the rest. Look at his collar, he's a kitty pet. It was the pale tabby again. Once a kitty pet, always a kitty pet. This clan needs wild-born warriors to defend it, not another soft mouth to feed. Lionheart bends down and hisses into Rusty's ear. That tabby is Longtail. He smells your fear. They all do. You must prove to him and the other cats that your fear won't hold you back. The description of Longtail is a pale tabby tom with dark black stripes. The tabby continued to jeer at him. Your collar is a mark of the two legs, and that noisy jingling will make you a poor hunter at best. At worst, it will bring the two legs into our territory, looking for the poor lost kitty pet who fills the woods with his pitiful tingling. All the cats howled in agreement. Longtail went on, well aware that he had the support of his audience. The noise of your treacherous bell will alert our enemies, even if your two-leg stench doesn't. He's like the mean gay. If this was a high school, this would be the mean gay bully. Then Lionheart hissed into Rusty's ear once more. Do you back down from a challenge? Rusty still didn't move, but this time he was trying to pinpoint Longtail's position. There he was, just behind a dusky brown queen. Rusty flattened his ears, narrowed his eyes, and hissing leaped through the startled cats to fling himself onto his tormentor. Longtail was completely unprepared for Rusty's attack. He staggered sideways, losing his footing on the hard-baked earth. Filled with rage and desperate to prove himself, Rusty dug his claws deep into the tabby cat's fur and sank in his teeth. No subtle rituals of swiping and boxing preceded this fight. The two cats were locked in a screaming, writhing tussle that flipped and somersaulted around the clearing at the heart of the camp. The other cats had to spring out of the way to avoid the screeching whirlwind of fur. As Rusty scratched and struggled, he was suddenly aware that he felt no fear, only exhilaration. Through the roaring of the blood in his ears, he could hear the cats around them wailing with excitement. They're saying, World Star! That's a really old joke, by the way. I'm so sorry. Rusty feels his collar tighten around his neck. Longtail had gripped it between his teeth and was tugging and tugging hard. Rusty felt a terrible pressure at his throat. Unable to breathe, he started to panic. He writhed and twisted, but each movement only made the pressure worse. Retching and gulping for air, he summoned up all his strength and tried to pull away from Longtail's grip. And suddenly, with a loud snap, he was free. Longtail tumbled away from him. Rusty scrambled to his paws and looked around. Longtail was crouching 3 tail lengths away. And dangling from Longtail's mouth, Rusty saw his collar, mangled and broken. The symbolism. And then at once, Bluestar leaps down from the high rock and silences the crowd. Rusty could feel a cut stinging above his eye. Longtail's left ear was badly torn, and blood dripped down his lean shoulders onto the dusty ground. They stared at each other, their hostility not yet spent. The way the SSS Warrior Cats team animated the scene was spectacular. I highly recommend going to watch it. Blue Star takes the collar from Longtail and says, "The newcomer has lost his two-leg collar in a battle for his honor. StarClan has spoken its approval. This cat has been released from the hold of his two-leg owners and is free to join Thunderclan as an apprentice." Rusty looks at Blue Star and nods. He stood up and stepped forward into a shaft of sunshine, welcoming the warmth on his sore muscles. The pool of light blazed bright on his orange pelt, making his fur glow. Rusty lifted his head proudly and looked at the cats that surrounded him. This time no cat argued or jeered. He had shown himself to be a worthy opponent in battle. Blue Star approached Rusty and placed the shredded collar on the ground in front of him. She touched his ear gently with her nose. "You look like a brand of fire in the sunlight." Her eyes flashed briefly, as if her words had more meaning for her than Rusty knew. It's like the prophecy." "No, it can't be." She says, "You fought well." She turns to the clan and announced, "From this day forward, until he has earned his warrior name, this apprentice will be called, you guessed it, Firepaw, in honor of his flame-colored coat." She stepped back and, with the other cats, waited silently for his next move. Without hesitating, Rusty turned and kicked dust and grass over his collar as though burying his dirt. And then Longtail just kind of stalks away, and the cats of the clan split up into groups, murmuring to each other excitedly. "Hey, Firepaw!" Rusty heard Greypaw's friendly voice behind him. Firepaw! A thrill of pride surged through him at the sound of his new name. He turned to greet the gray apprentice with a welcoming sniff. "Great fight, Firepaw," mewed Greypaw. "Especially for a kitty pet." "Okay. So he's an apprentice of the clan now. I think we can stop bringing up his past." Longtail is a warrior, although he only finished his training 2 moons ago. That scar you left on his ear won't let him forget you in a hurry. You've spoiled his good looks, that's for sure. Every cat in this clan is gay. "Thanks, Greypaw," Firepaw replied. He put up quite a fight, though. He hears the cats of the clan start to welcome him. Firepaw closed his eyes for a moment and let the voices wash over him. "Firepaw! Hey, Firepaw! Welcome, young Firepaw." "Good name, too," Greypaw mewed approvingly, jolting him awake. Firepaw looked around. Where did Longtail creep off to? I think he was heading toward Spotted Leaf's den. Greypaw tipped his head toward the fern-enclosed corner Longtail had disappeared into. "She's our medicine cat. Not bad looking either. Younger and a lot prettier than most. Crazy. He wants the medicine cat huzz." A low yowl next to the 2 cats stopped Greypaw mid-speech. They both turned, and Firepaw recognized the powerful gray tabby cat who had sat behind Greypaw earlier. "Darkstripe?" mewed Greypaw, tipping his head respectfully. Darkstripe looked at Firepaw. "Lucky your collar snapped when it did. Longtail is a young warrior, but I can't imagine him being beaten by a kitty pet." So, kitty pet isn't a slur in this universe, but they kind of use it like a slur a little bit. It's like, alright, I know this is 2003, but let's chill. And then Darkstripe stalks off, and Greypaw says, "Now Darkstripe is neither young nor pretty. Greypaw's got jokes." Firepaw was about to agree with his new friend when he was interrupted by a warning yowl from an old gray cat sitting at the edge of the clearing. Greypaw says, "Small ear smells trouble." Firepaw barely had time to look around before a young cat crashed through the bushes and into the camp. He was skinny and, apart from the white tip of his long, thin tail, jet black from head to toe. Greypaw says, "That's Ravenpaw. Why is he alone? Where's Tigerclaw?" Firepaw looked at Ravenpaw staggering across the floor of the clearing. He was panting heavily. His coat was ruffled and dusty, and his eyes were wild with fear. "Who are Ravenpaw and Tigerclaw?" Firepaw whispered to Greypaw as several other cats raced past him to greet the new arrival. Greypaw says, "Ravenpaw is an apprentice. Tigerclaw his mentor. Ravenpaw went out with Tigerclaw and Redtail at sunrise on a mission against RiverClan, the Lucky Furpaw." "Redtail?" Firepaw echoed, thoroughly confused by all these names. "Blue Star's deputy," hissed Greypaw. "But why on earth has Ravenpaw come back alone?" he added to himself. He lifted his head to listen as Blue Star stepped forward. "Ravenpaw?" The she-cat spoke calmly, but a look of worry clouded her blue eyes. The other cats drew back, curling their lips with anxiety. "What has happened?" Blue Star jumped onto the high rock and looked down at the trembling cat. "Speak, Ravenpaw." Ravenpaw was still struggling for breath, and his sides heaved fitfully while the dust around him turned red with blood, but he still managed to scramble up onto the high rock and stand beside Blue Star. He turned to the crowd of eager faces that surrounded him, and summoned enough breath to declare, "Redtail is dead." And that's where we're gonna stop for today. Ha ha ha! I'm so evil. Yeah, so that's the first 3 chapters of Into the Wild. If you're still interested, feel free to pop back next week, same time, same place, me and you, grabbing a drink, a little coffee, a little martini, talking about cats. feel free to let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear opinions. Again, I'm really sorry if you could hear any of my stomach noises at all. Fun fact about me is I can't burp, so my food just digests really weird. My cat's fountain decided to run out of water halfway through this recording, so it's been making a really loud, like, angry sound for the past half hour, so I really hope that didn't get into the audio, but yeah, let me know if you enjoyed, let me know your thoughts. I will see you guys next week for another episode of Cat Tales. Goodbye, and may StarClan light your path.